Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Friday, January 4th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's NBA, NHL, and college basketball games. Look ahead to tonight's games in each of those sports. Go over my mock bracket. As of right now, I'm going to be doing the mock brackets throughout sporadically on podcasts. I'll do them today, and then I'll start doing them weekly after the Super Bowl once we get closer to Selection Sunday. I'll also discuss the Manny Machado, Bryce Harper situation a little bit. West Virginia replaces Dana Holgerson, NHL power rankings, and my NFL wildcard round picks. We'll start at the NBA because there's something I really have to get to, and it's an opinion that kind of just dawned on me last night. The Spurs defeated the Raptors 125-107. Fantastic win for Greg Popovich and the Spurs. They're 22-17. Toronto drops to 28-12. LaMarcus Aldridge had 23 points, but the story of this game was DeMar DeRozan against his former team. 21 points, 14 boards, and 11 assists. Rudy Gay had 13. Derek White had 19. Bryn Forbes had 20. Off the bench, Patty Mills had 12. And Pau Gasol, interestingly, did not play in this game. The big story from a Raptors perspective, Kawhi Leonard heavily booed in this game. And the Spurs rightfully gave them thank you collage with Danny Green. And the fans were really cheering for Danny Green and not for Kawhi Leonard. The fans in San Antonio hate Kawhi Leonard because he requested the trade. They have every right to boo him. He wanted out of there, and that's what he got, and that's what he deserved. And the Raptors, it got in their heads, and that's why they got crushed the way they did. Leonard actually had a pretty decent game. He had 21 points and 5 assists. Serge Ibaka had 14. Pascal Siakam had 10 with 7 assists and 6 boards. Fred VanVleet had 12, and Danny Green did not have any points. Norman Powell had 14 off the bench. Greg Monroe had 12 off the bench. DeLon Wright had 15 off the bench. Kyle Lowry did not play due to a sore back. The Nuggets defeated the Kings 117-113. Sacramento was up big in this game. Denver comes back and wins. They're 25-11. Sacramento's 19-19. Jamal Murray, 36 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. Nikola Jokic, 26 points, 13 boards, 6 assists. Mason Plumlee got the start at power forward with 12 points. Paul Millsap off the bench at 10. Gary Harris off the bench, 14. I think it's weird that Harris is coming off the bench. I think they should start him. Buddy Hield had 29. Nemaja Bajika had 17. Willie Cauley-Stein had 13. De'Aaron Fox had 16 with 8 assists. Off the bench, Yogi Ferrell had 11, and Bogdan Bogdanovic had 14. And to me, the big story is the big reason I want to start the NBA. The Rockets defeat the Warriors 135-134 in overtime. The Rockets go to 22-15. Golden State drops to 25-14. James Harden is the MVP favorite right now. He had his MVP moment last night by hitting the go-ahead 3 in overtime with 1 second to go. I'm actually rewatching the game on NBA TV as we speak. This was just a phenomenal game back and forth. I think the Rockets deserved to win this game. The forgotten thing about this is that Golden State got away with Kevin Durant stepping out of bounds. And it was just the worst call of the season. And Golden State rightfully lost the game, and Harden, to me, is the big story. His performance, 44 points, 10 boards, 15 assists, 10 3-pointers. Austin Rivers got the start at the 2 guard, or I should say at point guard. He had 18 points. He hit some big 3-pointers in that game. Clint Capella, 29 points and 21 boards. Danielle House Jr. had 17. He's been starting at forward for them. And then Gerald Green had 16 off the bench. Kevin Durant had 26 points and 7 boards. Missed the game-winning 3 at the buzzer. Kevin Looney had 12 with 7 boards. Stephen Curry had 35 points, 6 assists, including 5 3-pointers. He had a big one in this game too. Klay Thompson at 26. Warrior bench didn't do anything. And the reason why I wanted to start the NBA is about James Harden and the fact that I believe he's the MVP favorite right now. He's actually favored to win the MVP at FanDuel at, I believe the number is plus 115. And it's just amazing how one game and one big shot can change the MVP picture. And that's exactly what James Harden did last night with that performance. And if he wins MVP for the second straight year, we're going to look back at that moment and say, yeah, he should have been the MVP. And he was the best player on the court last night. He led that Rockets comeback. And the other forgotten thing about this game is that Harden tweaked something in the first quarter and had to go to the locker room. And then he came back in the game and led this Rockets comeback. And yes, the role players deserve credit, but Harden has to be the MVP right now. And he won the Conference Player of the Month in the month of December, which was well-deserved. Mike D'Antoni was the Conference Coach of the Month. And it's just phenomenal that the Rockets are playing great basketball yet again without Chris Paul. And that shot by Harden was just ridiculous with 1 second left. That they were trailing, and he hits the go-ahead three to put them up by 1. And this was, I think, the game of the year so far in the NBA as well. Tonight's slate, you have the Jazz at the Cavaliers at 7:30, 8 o'clock ESPN, the Mavericks at the Celtics. No Kyrie Irving again. Am I going to pick against the Boston Celtics at home again? Yes, the Mavericks are a better team than the Timberwolves, but I'm going to take the Celtics again at home. I don't feel good about this at all. The line is Boston -5. Luka Doncic will probably be the best player on the court in this game tonight, but the Celtics are the better team, and that's what I think will ultimately be the difference. The Celtics and their bench. Gordon Hayward played really well against the Timberwolves. Maybe he won't have as good as a game, but I think he'll have an impact on this game. And I just think that the TD Garden crowd will ignite this team in a nationally televised game yet again. So give me the Boston Celtics at home over the Dallas Mavericks. You have the Wizards at the Heat, the Pacers at the Bulls, the Nets at the Grizzlies, the Magic at the Timberwolves, 8:30 the Hawks at the Bucks, 9 o'clock the Clippers at the Suns, 10:30 ESPN, the Thunder at the Trailblazers. I'm going to take the Oklahoma City Thunder again on the road. It is a pick'em, and I think that OKC should actually be a 1-point favorite, if not a 1.5-point favorite. They have the best two players on the court in Russell Westbrook and Paul George. Damian Lillard has the capability of being the best player on the court in this game, but I just like how Oklahoma City's playing, and I really think that they get yet another big win on the road. And then the Knicks at the Lakers, still no LeBron James, and Kyle Kuzma might not play, that he's dealing with an injury as well. NHL. It was a big slate last night. The Bruins defeated the Flames 6-4. Boston improves to 23-14-4. Calgary drops to 25-13-4. Number one star of the game with 2 goals, Jake DeBrusk. The number 2 star of the game with a goal and assist, Johnny Gaudreau. Number 3 star of the game with 2 goals, Brad Marchand. The Sabres defeat the Panthers 4-3. Buffalo improves to 22-13-6. Florida drops to 17-16-6. Number 1 star of the game with 2 goals, Jeff Skinner. Number 2 star of the game with the goal, Tage Thompson. Number 3 star of the game with the goal and assist, Alexander Barkov. The Hurricanes defeat the Flyers 5-3 as Carolina improves to 17-17-5. Philly drops to 15-20-5. Number 1 star of the game with 2 goals and an assist, Teuvo Teravainen. Number 2 star of the game with 2 assists, Claude Giroux. Number 3 star of the game with 2 assists, Sebastian Aho. The Islanders defeat the Blackhawks 3-2 in overtime. Good win for the Islanders. They improve to 22-13-4. Chicago drops to 15-21-7. Number 1 star of the game with 2 goals, Matthew Barzal. Number 2 star of the game with the overtime goal, Devin Taves. That was his first career goal, too. And the number 3 star of the game with the goal, Patrick Kane. The Canadiens defeat the Canucks 2-0. Montreal improves to 22-14-5. Vancouver drops to 20-20-4. Number 1 star of the game with 33 saves on 33 shots, Carey Price. Number 2 star of the game with an assist, Joel Armia, and the number 3 star of the game with a goal, Jordy Ben. The Blues defeat the Capitals 5-2, an impressive win for St. Louis to go to 16-18-4. Washington drops to 24-12-3. Number 1 star of the game with a goal and assist, Alex Pietrangelo. Number 2 star of the game with an assist, Jaden Schwartz. Number 3 star of the game with an assist, Robert Bertuzzo. The Lightning defeat the Kings 6-2 as Tampa Bay goes to 32-7-2. LA drops to 16-23-3. Number 1 star of the game with a goal and 3 assists, Nikita Kucherov. Number 2 star of the game with a goal and 2 assists, Steven Stamkos. Number 3 star of the game with a goal and assist, Braden Point. In what was an afternoon game, the Wild defeat the Maple Leafs 4-3. Toronto they drop to 26-12-2. Minnesota improves to 19-17-3. Number 1 star of the game with a goal and 2 assists, Jared Spurgeon. Number 2 star of the game with 2 goals, Mitch Marner. Number 3 star of the game with 38 saves on 41 shots, Devin Dubnyk. Tonight's games at 7 o'clock, you have the Jets at the Penguins. 7:30, the Predators at the Red Wings. 7:30 as well, Blue Jackets Hurricanes. 8 o'clock, Capital Stars. 9 o'clock, Devils Coyotes. Rangers Avalanche. And 10 o'clock, you have the Golden Knights at the Ducks. Breaking NBA news before we go to college. LeBron James is out at least another week. So the Lakers are under some pressure now to win these games. They're lucky they're playing against the tanking Knicks tonight. So they should be able to get that win. But if their schedule, which I don't really know by heart, if they start to struggle a little bit, I can see LeBron rushing back a little bit. I thought he'd be back by now, but he's not, and that, to me, is not a good sign for the Lakers and LeBron James that he's not back already. College basketball last night. So many interesting results in conference play. Number 2, Michigan defeats Penn State 68-55. Michigan improves to 14-0. Penn State drops to 7-7. Lincoln, Pennsylvania upsets Morgan State 77-75 as Morgan State drops to 5-8. St. Peter's defeats Siena 65-60. St. Peter's improves to 4-9. Siena drops to 5-9. Rice defeats Southern Miss 73-65. Rice goes to 6-9. Southern Miss drops to 8-6. Sacred Heart defeats LIU Brooklyn 79-75. Sacred Heart goes to 5-9. LIU Brooklyn drops to 6-7. Number 18, NC State defeats Miami 87-82. NC State goes to 13-1. Miami drops to 8-5. Number 21, Indiana defeats Illinois 73-65. Indiana goes to 12-2. Illinois drops to 4-10. Minnesota upsets number 22, Wisconsin 59-52. An impressive win for Richard Pitino's team. They're 12-2. Wisconsin's 10-4. Purdue defeats number 25, Iowa 86-70. Purdue 9-5, Iowa 11-3. Bryant defeats St. Francis Brooklyn 76-66. Bryant 4-8. St. Francis Brooklyn 8-6. Wagner defeats Central Connecticut State 80-58. Wagner 6-6. Central Con State 6-8. Robert Morris defeats Fairleigh Dickinson 69-62. Robert Morris 6-8. Fairleigh Dickinson 5-8. Marshall defeats Old Dominion 70-67. Marshall 8-6. Old Dominion 10-4. Navy defeats Colgate 72-66. Navy 4-8. Colgate 8-6. Detroit Mercy defeats Wright State 79-58. Detroit Mercy 6-9. Wright State 7-9. Chattanooga defeats Western Carolina 73-62. Chattanooga 7-9. Western Carolina 3-13. East Tennessee State defeats Stanford 81-72 in overtime. East Tennessee State 12-4. Stanford 11-5. Wofford defeats the Citadel 112-81. Wofford 11-4. Citadel 9-4. Furman defeats Mercer 71-58. Furman 13-2. Mercer 5-9. Coastal Carolina defeats Troy 88-75. Coastal 7-6. Troy 7-6. Holy Cross defeats Loyola Maryland 80-73. Holy Cross 10-4. Loyola 4-10. St. Francis, Pennsylvania defeats St. Mary's 80-69. St. Francis 5-7. Mount St. Mary's 3-11. Oakland defeats Northern Kentucky 76-74. Oakland 7-9. Northern Kentucky 12-4. Stetson defeats Edward Waters 72-65. Stetson's 4-11. Charleston defeats Towson 67-55. Charleston 13-2. Towson 5-10. Delaware defeats William and Mary 58-56. Delaware 10-6. William and Mary 6-9. Drexel defeats Elan 79-65. Drexel 7-9. Elan 5-11. UNC Wilmington defeats James Madison 86-83 in double overtime. Wilmington 5-10. James Madison 7-9. Quinnipiac defeats Manhattan 63-59. Quinnipiac 6-6. Manhattan 2-11. Canisius defeats Marist 75-72. Canisius 4-8. Marist 5-8. Iona defeats Monmouth 103-84. Iona 3-9. Monmouth 1-13. Ryder defeats Fairfield 83-82. Ryder 6-7. Fairfield 3-10. George Mason defeats St. Joseph's 85-60. George Mason 7-7. St. Joe's 7-6. Western Kentucky defeats Charlotte 68-50. Western Kentucky 8-6. Charlotte 3-9. FIU defeats Middle Tennessee 83-76. FIU 10-4. Middle Tennessee 3-11. Purdue Fort Wayne defeats South Dakota State 104-88. Fort Wayne 11-7. South Dakota State 11-6. Oral Roberts defeats North Dakota 83-72. Oral Roberts 6-11. North Dakota 6-9. Milwaukee defeats Cleveland State 83-76. Milwaukee 6-9. Cleveland State 5-11. Louisiana Monroe defeats Little Rock 97-84. Little Rock 8-5. Yale Monroe's 8-5. Little Rock is 5-9. Texas State defeats Georgia Southern 73-70. Texas State 12-2. Georgia Southern 8-6. Georgia State defeats Texas Arlington 63-58. Georgia State 10-4. Texas Arlington 4-10. South Alabama defeats Appalachian State 79-73. South Alabama 8-6. Appalachian State 5-9. Arkansas State upsets Louisiana 94-83. Arkansas State 7-7. Louisiana Lafayette 9-5. North Texas defeats Louisiana Tech 63-59. North Texas 14-1. Louisiana Tech 11-4. Green Bay defeats Youngstown State 99-93 in overtime. Green Bay 8-7. Youngstown State 4-12. Murray State defeats Morehead State 90-69. Murray 10-2. Morehead 4-10. UTSA defeats UTEP 75-60. UTSA 7-7. UTEP 5-7. UAB defeats FAU 67-50. UAB 9-5. FAU 9-5. Utah upsets Arizona State 96-86. Utah 7-6. Arizona State 9-4. Grand Canyon defeats Utah Valley, I should say, 71-60. Grand Canyon 8-6. Utah Valley 11-5. Eastern Illinois defeats Tennessee Martin 92-87 in overtime. Eastern Illinois 8-6. Tennessee Martin 5-7. Tennessee Tech defeats Tennessee State 66-64. Tech's 5-9. State's 3-10. Jacksonville State defeats Belmont 83-73. Jacksonville State 9-5. Belmont 9-3. Austin Peay defeats Eastern Kentucky 93-75. Austin Peay 9-5. Eastern Kentucky 7-7. Montana State defeats Portland State 98-88. Montana State 5-8. Portland State 5-8. Weber State defeats Northern Arizona 77-52. Weber's 9-5. Northern Arizona is 3-10. Arizona defeats Colorado 64-56. Arizona 10-4. Colorado 9-4. San Francisco defeats St. Mary's 76-72. San Francisco 13-2. St. Mary's 9-7. Idaho State defeats Southern Utah 88-68. Idaho State 6-6. Southern Utah 5-7. Montana defeats Sacramento State 87-56. Montana 10-4. Sacramento State 6-5. SIU Edwardsville defeats Southeast Missouri State 94-88. Edwardsville 5-8. Missouri State is 5-9. I should say Southeast Missouri State. Memphis defeats Wichita State 85-74. Memphis 9-5. Wichita 7-6. Santa Clara upsets San Diego 68-56. Santa Clara 9-6. San Diego 11-5. USC defeats Cal 82-73. USC 8-6. Cal 5-8. UC Irvine defeats UT Rio Grande 85-74. Irvine 12-4. Rio Grande 8-8. New Mexico State drops to Cal Baptist 82-76. Cal Baptist 9-5. New Mexico State 11-4. Bakersfield defeats Seattle 83-71. Bakersfield 9-5. Seattle 12-4. Pepperdine defeats Loyola Marymount 77-62. Pepperdine 8-7. Marymount 12-3. Idaho defeats Eastern Washington 74-71. Idaho 4-10. Eastern Washington 3-11. UCLA defeats Stanford 92-70. UCLA 8-6. Stanford 7-6. BYU defeats Pacific 90-87. BYU 9-7. Pacific 10-6. Small slate tonight, 7 o'clock ESPN 2. You have Tulane against SMU. It's at Tulane. And I think SMU is going to win that game going away. They're the by far better team. Tulane is obviously the worst team in the athletic conference. You have Ball State and Toledo. Toledo quietly only has one loss on the whole year. And they're only favored by 4.5. I think Toledo destroys Ball State. Cornell and Johnson and Wales. Indiana, Purdue against Indiana, Chicago. Or I should say Illinois, Chicago. On ESPNU. UIC is favored by 3.5, but I think IUPUI can cover and perhaps win outright. 9 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network. Buffalo is at Eastern Michigan, the 20th ranked team in the country. Only has one loss on the year. So the MAC has two pretty good teams in there. But ultimately, I think it's a one big lead, and I think it's Buffalo's spot to lose. So I think that if Toledo actually won the tournament, the MAC tournament, they'd be the 12th seed, and I actually think Buffalo would get in at large. So I'd say a possible two big league, but ultimately a one big league, because I think that Buffalo destroys the MAC tournament, although I think Toledo is pretty good too. So I think Buffalo beats Eastern Michigan and covers the 10 points easily. And then two not so important games. Cal Poly hosts Holy Names, and then Bethesda is at UC Riverside. Next, I want to go over my bracket projection for this month. I organized it by resumes and future projections on how all the teams are going to do. I'm going to go by the order I've listed, which is the teams and the seed number. But I'm going to go in order of the region, even though my list is sloppy. Number 1 in the Midwest, I have Michigan, and I have them as the number 1 overall seed right now. They're currently undefeated and have some big wins on the year, including at Villanova and home against North Carolina. The 2 seed in the Midwest, I have North Carolina. The 3 seed at Auburn, 4 seed Houston, 5 seed Virginia Tech, 6 seed Minnesota, 7 seed Texas, 8 seed Marquette, 9 seed LSU, 10 seed Iowa, 11 seed playing game between Davidson and San Francisco, 12 seed Fresno State. Let's just say Fresno State wins the auto bid, because it usually is a random team that wins the auto bid in that conference every year, because I believe San Diego State was the auto bid winner last year, and they got in the tournament, and so did Nevada as an at-large. So let's say Fresno State gets the auto bid there. 13 in the Midwest, North Texas. 14, Loyola Chicago. 15, you have Lehigh. And 16, play-in game between Howard and Grambling. Your East region, number 1 seed Duke, 2 seed Kansas. And by the way, Duke's the number 2 overall seed. And then, again, 2 seed Kansas in the East. 3 seed Michigan State. 4 seed Kentucky. That's a coincidence that those 4 teams that play in the Champions Classic every year all end up the top 4 seeds in the East region. That's hysterical. 5 seed Villanova. 6 seed Oklahoma. 7 Arizona State. 8 St. John's. 9 Maryland. 10 Cincinnati. 11 Creighton. 12 St. Louis. Let's just say they win the auto bid in the Atlantic. And then 2 other teams get at-larges, one being Davidson, which I discussed, and you'll see another one coming up in the South region. And that's a spoiler alert. 13 in the East, Wofford. 14 Vermont, 15 Gardner-Webb, and 16 Wagner. And by the way, these mid-majors from 12 down, I'm projecting to win their respective auto bids, like the Fresno States, and the other one on here is Loyola Chicago that I already said, because I think the Mountain Valley is wide open, and I think that's a team that's capable of winning that conference tournament, and that would be my bet as of right now. The number 3 overall seed, which is the 1 seed in the South, I have Tennessee, 2 seed Virginia, 3 seed Texas Tech, 4 seed Florida State, 5 seed Seton Hall, 6 Ohio State, 7 Providence, 8 Nebraska, 9 Georgetown. Yes, I did just say Georgetown. 10 Kansas State, 11 play-in game VCU and Washington. 12 seed Penn, 13 Lipscomb, 14 South Dakota State, 15 Texas State, and 16 is Oakland. And last but not least, your number 4 overall seed, number 1 seed in the West, Gonzaga. 2 Nevada, 3 Wisconsin, 4 NC State, 5 Indiana, 6 Mississippi State, 7 TCU, 8 Buffalo, 9 Arizona, 10 UCF, 11 Iowa State, 12 Charleston, 13 Murray State, not Missouri State. Murray State from the Ohio Valley Conference. 14 Montana, 15 Grand Canyon, and 16 play-in game Ryder and Abilene Christian. And an interesting theme that occurred while working on this mock bracket, a lot of rematches. Like, for example, a projected Elite Eight rematch between Michigan and North Carolina. Those two teams obviously played this year in the regular season. And another, for example, in the round of 64, West bracket, 8 versus 9, Buffalo, Arizona. Buffalo obviously upset Arizona last year. And then another fun one, I said in the East region, all the teams in the Champions Classic would be Duke against Kentucky and then Kansas against Michigan State. And those were the 2 matchups, ironically, this year in the Champions Classic. Although the Duke-Kentucky one would be more intriguing because Kentucky's playing a lot better than they did in that first game against Duke. And then another funny one that occurred to me while doing this. Well, what I should have done is put Buffalo against Arizona State somehow, and then it would have been Bobby Hurley against his old school. That would have been a funny story. But speaking of Arizona State, my projected round of 32 chalk would be Arizona State versus Kansas. Arizona State is the lone team to knock off Kansas this year, and that is a projected chalk round of 32 matchup in the East region. And another rematch would be North Carolina against Texas. Those two teams played against each other on Thanksgiving. Texas upset North Carolina. That would have, in theory, be in the Midwest region. And then sitting there in the East region is Villanova, along with those teams in the Champions Classic. So there's more intrigue there. And then another one that jumped out at me while doing this is also in the East region, St. John's against Duke in the chalk round of 32 game in the East region, because St. John's upset Duke last year at Madison Square Garden. So that's another funny one. It'd only be fitting if I had Virginia as a 1 seed and UMBC as my projected America East winner, and then you would have a rematch of that. That would be hysterical. And I made sure I didn't put conference matchups in the round of 32. There'd be some weird ways that it potentially would happen in the Sweet 16. Like, for example, I have a scenario where 2 teams from the same conference would meet in the Sweet 16. Or even the Elite Eight, per se, which happens each and every year. I remember when Syracuse made their run, they ran into North Carolina. I think that was in 2016. They played North Carolina. I believe that was in the Final Four. But I've seen that before, and that in theory would happen again if some of these matches broke right. We'll do another one of these. I'm going to say the Friday after the Super Bowl is when we're going to do the bracket game projections. We're going to do it the Friday after the Super Bowl is going to be the next one, and we'll do it on Fridays, and then obviously during the championship rounds and tournaments and conferences, we're going to be doing them more frequently than not. There are various reports regarding Manny Machado yesterday. There was one that said that close friends of his were saying that he was going to sign with the White Sox, and another one that said that close friends of his that were going to sign with the Yankees. We don't know who to believe. Dan Clark has been absolutely saying for a week now that he's going to the Yankees. Dan Clark obviously used to cover the Orioles. He currently writes for the Internet Baseball Writers Association. And if he's right about Machado, he's going to get a lot of credit because he's obviously not Ken Rosenthal. He's not John Heyman. He's not John Morosi. He's not even Buster Olney, Jason Stark. He's not any of those guys, and he's been reporting that it's a done deal that he's going to the Bronx for over a week now. And then that White Sox report was interesting. Obviously, they traded for Yonder Alonso, which a lot of people thought was a wink-wink, per se. And then regarding Bryce Harper, there's a lot of people in the industry that thinks that he's ultimately going to return to the Washington Nationals. If that's the case, that probably makes the Nationals favorites in the National League East. If not, they're still a good team without Harper, with all that talent. And they obviously have the talent to replace him in-house with Juan Soto and Victor Robles. But those guys with Harper, they're certainly a much better team than they were to be without Harper. So it would be interesting to see what ends up happening with Manny Machado and Bryce Harper. But at gunpoint to my head, I think Machado ends up in the Bronx and Harper ends up in Hollywood, just like I said on my New Year's Eve podcast. Troy Brown has been hired at West Virginia to replace Dana Holgorsen. Troy Brown, obviously, now the former coach of Troy. Good hire by the Mountaineers. I thought Brown was the favorite for that job and the best fit, and he certainly has turned Troy into a great program in the Sun Belt, and now he gets his opportunity in a Power 5 school. I think Troy Brown will do a good job, just like I think Holgorsen will be fine in Houston. And now it'll be fun to see if Houston and West Virginia hook up in the future. That would be very interesting, especially if it was in Morgantown, and how Holgorsen would be received there. I just love when that happens, especially we saw it this year, obviously, with Florida and Mississippi State with Dan Mullen. It's more fun when it's in conference, but it's also funnier if it's at a conference and the right matchup comes about. Like, imagine Texas A&M going to Florida State and how Jimbo Fisher would be received. That would be interesting, too. So Trey Brown, good hire for West Virginia. That's the guy I think they should have gone out and gotten. And I think this is an A hire, meaning I'd give it an A. Power rankings for the NHL. I'm going to be quick here, going from 31 to 1. Number 31 is the Ottawa Senators. They're living up to their reputation as the worst team in hockey. 30 is the Sacramento Kings. I'm interested to see if they trade away some guys. 29 is the Philadelphia Flyers. This is the biggest disappointment in the league to me this year. 28 is the Detroit Red Wings, reverting back to what they should be. 27, the Arizona Coyotes. I just think this team's terrible. 26 is the New Jersey Devils. Huge regression from last year, and their goaltending hasn't been that great. 25 is the New York Rangers. They're reverting into the team that people thought they would be too. 24 is the St. Louis Blues. They got a big win last night, but I don't know if that means that they go on a run. 23 is the Chicago Blackhawks. Very inconsistent lately. They just lost last night in overtime to the Islanders. 22 is the Carolina Hurricanes, to me the most confusing team in the league. Like I said, they would get a big win in Philly, and then they lose at home to the Coyotes. That's just the kind of team that Carolina is. Number 21 is the Florida Panthers. They've been playing a little better lately, although they lost to Buffalo last night. 20 is the Minnesota Wild. Boy, they have fallen. 19th, the Edmonton Oilers. They ended a 6-game skid recently. 18th, the Vancouver Canucks. They've been a little up and down. 17th, Anaheim Ducks. They've faltered a little bit after playing really well at one point. 16 is the Dallas Stars. They've been playing some decent hockey lately. 15 is the Colorado Avalanche. I think they should be better than what they are. 14 is the Montreal Canadiens. I think one of the two biggest overachievers in the league right now, along with number 13, the New York Islanders. The Islanders have been sensational. Matthew Barzal is certainly a building block. Anders Lee as well. Barry Trotz has done excellent so far in his brief tenure at the Islanders. 12th, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Pressure's on them to start playing better, or else teams are going to be going to try to overpay for Artemi Panarin via trade. 11 is the Buffalo Sabres. They got a big win last night at home against the Panthers to break out of their offensive melees. 10's the Boston Bruins. They got a big win last night at home against the Flames. 9, Pittsburgh Penguins. They've been playing better lately too. 8's the Washington Capitals. It's either going to be them or Pittsburgh that wins the Metro. 7, the Predators. I don't like how they've been playing lately. They lost at home to the Rangers, and they've been losing other weird games. Tonight's a trap game for them too at Detroit. 6 is the San Jose Sharks. They got a good win at Colorado on national TV the other night. 5's the Winnipeg Jets. They've been interesting. They've been losing weird games too. 4 is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've been playing good hockey, although that was a bad loss yesterday against the Wild. 3 is the Calgary Flames, best record in the West right now, and the most points. 2 is the Vegas Golden Knights. I really love this team's turnaround. I think that right now they're the team to beat in the West. I love how they've been playing. And number 1's the Tampa Bay Lightning. No betting against the Lightning until further notice. Now I'm going to give you my NFL wildcard round picks. Starting tomorrow at 4:30 on ESPN and ABC. It's a simulcast. Sean McDonough, Jason Witten, Booger McFarland, and Lisa Salters on the call. You have an AFC South showdown in the wild card game between your 6th seed Indianapolis Colts and your 3rd seed Houston Texans. 4:30, ESPN, ABC. Colts are 10-6. Texans are 11-5. These two teams played each other twice this season in 2 close games, with each team winning once, and ironically, the 2 road teams were the teams that won. The Colts are coming off a big divisional road win in Nashville against the Titans to win the AFC's final wildcard spot. The Texans are coming off a divisional home win over the Jacksonville Jaguars to clinch the AFC South. The keys to this game is whether Deshaun Watson gets time to throw, considering the Texans' offensive line is the worst among the playoff teams, and whether the Texans' pass rush can get to Andrew Luck, whose offensive line is much improved now with the drafting of Quentin Nelson to go with Ryan Kelly and Anthony Costanzo. The Texans are missing trade acquisition Demaryius Thomas due to a torn Achilles, so DeAndre Hopkins is the Texans' only offensive weapon unless Watson uses his mobility. The secondary is the other weakness of the Texans team, and it hasn't gotten that much attention. And Andrew Luck has torched that secondary throughout his career, and that'll be the case again as T.Y. Hilton and Eric Ebron will have big games as the Colts will win their first playoff game in 4 seasons. The prediction, Indianapolis 30, Houston 26. The Colts are getting a point. I'm taking that point and running. The Colts are winning outright, as I just said. Saturday night, you have your 5-seeded Seattle Seahawks against the 4-seeded Dallas Cowboys, 8:15 on Fox. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Aaron Andrews, Chris Myers on the call. Seattle and Dallas are both 10-6. These two teams met earlier in the season, and the Seahawks won the game convincingly, and that was before the Cowboys acquired Amari Cooper, which changed the outlook of their season. The Seahawks are coming off a divisional home win over the Arizona Cardinals on a game-winning field goal by Sebastian Janikowski to ensure themselves the 5 seed. The Cowboys are coming off a divisional road win in East Rutherford against the Giants in a meaningless game that Ezekiel Elliott did not play in. The key to this game is Russell Wilson against the improved and young Dallas Cowboys defense. And the boys' defense slowed down Drew Brees in a primetime game a few weeks ago. Meanwhile, the Seahawks offense and Wilson have not had the success against elite defenses this season, as we saw earlier in the year in that Monday night game against the Bears. The Seahawks defense is somewhat vulnerable without Earl Thomas in that secondary after he was lost for the season, although Bobby Wagner has been sensational this season in that pass rush. This was the hardest pick of wildcard weekend, but I trust Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson more in a playoff game than Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott. And by the way, if the Cowboys lose, I won't be surprised at all if Jason Garrett gets fired. And that's despite the Cowboys being home. So give me Seattle 27, Dallas 23. Seattle's getting 3, and I'm taking the 3. Sunday, you have the 5-seeded Los Angeles Chargers against the 4-seeded Baltimore Ravens. 1 o'clock CBS. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson on the call. Chargers 12-4, Ravens 10-6. These two teams met a few weeks ago in a Saturday night game in which Los Angeles was hosting the Ravens, and Baltimore got the big win on the road. The Chargers are coming off a divisional road win in Denver against the Broncos. The Ravens are coming off a big divisional home win over the Cleveland Browns to win the AFC North title. The Ravens are 6-1 since Lamar Jackson took over as their starter and perhaps saved Jim Harbaugh's job. And he is definitely the key to this game against a solid Chargers pass rush and secondary. The Ravens pass rush is very good, but their secondary is not, and that's where I see Phillip Rivers and the Chargers offense having success. In a back-and-forth contest that will be fun to watch, I like the Chargers to get the win on the road. LA 24, Baltimore 20. The Chargers are getting 3 points. I'm taking the points. 6-seeded Philadelphia Eagles against your 3-seeded Chicago Bears. 4:40 NBC. Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, Michelle Tafoya on the call. Eagles 9-7, Bears 12-4. These two teams did not meet this season, but met last year, and the Eagles won convincingly. But that was when Carson Wentz was healthy, and the Bears didn't have Khalil Mack or their current wide receivers on their roster. The Eagles are coming off a shutout road win in Landover against the Redskins, in which Nick Foles suffered a rib injury. The Bears are coming off an impressive road win in Minneapolis against the Vikings, in which they eliminated their divisional rival out of playoff contention. This is Mitch Trubisky's first playoff game, and how he does will be the key to their playoff success. And Kyle Long does appear to be healthy for their offensive line, which is big. The Eagles' offense is strangely better with Nick Foles and always tend to thrive when they are doubted. But the Bears' defense is by far the best unit on the field, led by Mack in the pass rush, and the secondary is getting back Eddie Jackson, which offsets the loss of Bryce Callahan due to a foot injury. Soldier Field will be fired up as the Bears get their first playoff win in a whopping 8 years. The prediction, Chicago 27, Philadelphia 17. I am taking the -6.5. So I'm taking one favorite to win out of the 4 games. Last but not least, my best bet, brought to you by FanDuel. The Utah Jazz, the Indiana Pacers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Los Angeles Lakers, SMU in college basketball, Buffalo in college basketball, and Tottenham in soccer. That's plus 289. I'm wagering $1.53 to win $4.42 with a payout of $5.95. That's it for the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping NBA, NHL, college basketball. I'll preview the 2 games tomorrow more in depth, and I'll go over my list of the teams that are most likely to win the Super Bowl, surprise players in the playoffs, and a lot more playoff things that I like to do, and obviously my best bet as well. I hope you guys have a great day.